The lilies were beautiful, white and pristine, sitting on my kitchen counter like they belonged there. But my husband did not buy them. I found out later that day who did. My best friend, the woman who held my hand through her divorce while she was sleeping with my husband for 2 years. The woman who sat in my kitchen 200 times, hugged my children, and told me I was her person.
I can't believe you would
She
betray
sent
me
those
like this.
flowers
How
to my
could
house
you?
like a declaration of war.
Please, you knew exactly
And that was
what this
only the
was.
beginning. Within
Please
72
let me
hours, I
go.
would be locked out of my
It's
own
all right,
home,
Emma. We'll fix this.
watching my 7-year-old daughter press her palm against the window, crying for me while my husband changed the locks. Within 2 weeks, my own mother would testify against me in court. Within a month, I would lose my children, my reputation, and the baby I did not even know I was carrying. My husband did not just cheat on me. He spent 2 years building a case to destroy me, and I never saw it coming. But here's what he did not expect. I fought back, and I won. This is my story. Value statement. If you have ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you have ever felt completely alone in your darkest moment, if you have ever wondered whether you are strong enough to survive, this story is for you. Because the truth is, you do not need someone to rescue you. You need to remember that you are capable of rescuing yourself. Meaning of the story. This is not just a story about cheating. This is a story about a woman who lost everything and discovered she was stronger than the man who tried to break her. It is a reminder that rock bottom is not the end. It is where you find out what you are truly made of. The lilies were beautiful, white and pristine, sitting on my kitchen counter like they belonged there, but my husband did not buy them. And the woman who did? She was standing in my living room 6 weeks before I found out I was carrying his third child. But I am getting ahead of myself. That morning started like any other Tuesday in our little corner of Westbrook, Ohio. I woke up at 6:47 to an empty bed. Grant's side was cold, the sheets barely wrinkled, which meant he had either never come home or had left before dawn. I told myself it was work. I had been telling myself that for 18 months. My name is Harper Mitchell. I was 34 years old, a stay-at-home mother of 2 beautiful children, and until that morning, I believed I had a good marriage. Not perfect. What marriage is perfect after 8 years, but good, solid. The kind of marriage where you know your husband will come home eventually, even if he smells like whiskey and claims he fell asleep at the office. I patted downstairs in my old college sweatshirt. The one Grant always said made me look frumpy. The house was quiet. Emma and Lucas were still sleeping, which gave me exactly 12 minutes of peace before the chaos of breakfast and school drop-off would begin. That is when I saw them. The lilies sat in a crystal vase I did not recognize, positioned in the center of our kitchen island, like a centerpiece at a fancy restaurant. They were gorgeous. The kind of arrangement that costs $100 minimum, all white blooms and delicate greenery, wrapped with a silk ribbon that probably cost more than my grocery budget for the week. My first thought was that Grant had finally done something romantic. My second thought was that Grant had never done anything romantic in his entire life, so who the hell sent these flowers? I reached for the small card tucked between the stems. For everything you have done. S.S. I did not know anyone named S. Not that I could think of at 6:50 in the morning, while my brain was still foggy from sleep, and my stomach was doing that strange churning thing it had been doing for the past few weeks. The pregnancy test. I had taken it yesterday afternoon while the kids were at school. 2 pink lines, clear as day. I had not told Grant yet because I wanted to find the right moment. We had talked about a third child, sort of. In that vague way, couples discuss hypotheticals. He always said, maybe someday, which I had interpreted as yes, eventually. Now, standing in my kitchen, with mysterious flowers and a positive pregnancy test hidden in my bathroom drawer, I felt a knot forming in my stomach that had nothing to do with morning sickness. The front door opened. Grant walked in at 7:15, still wearing yesterday's dress shirt, now wrinkled beyond salvation. His tie was stuffed in his pocket. His hair was mussed in a way that suggested fingers had run through it, and not his own. And the smell, vanilla, something sweet, something that was definitely not his usual cologne. He stopped when he saw me standing in the kitchen. His eyes went to the flowers. His face went white. "Who the hell sent those?" he demanded. His voice was sharp, accusatory, as if I had done something wrong by simply existing in my own kitchen at 7 in the morning. "I do not know," I said slowly. "They were here when I came downstairs." Grant crossed the room in 3 strides, snatching the card from my fingers before I could react. "S," he read aloud. His jaw tightened. "Who is S?" I was about to ask you the same thing. We stared at each other for across the kitchen island, the lilies sitting between us, like an accusation. Grant's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again. "Are you going to get that?" I asked. "It is work. At 7 in the morning?" Before he could answer, small footsteps thundered down the stairs. Emma burst into the kitchen, her brown hair a tangled mess, her pink pajamas covered in cartoon unicorns. "Mommy!" She ran to me for her morning hug, then spotted her father. "Daddy, you are home!" She ran to Grant, wrapping her arms around his legs. He patted her head, absently, his eyes still fixed on the flowers. Then Emma said something that changed everything. "Daddy, you smell like the lady at church." Grant froze. I froze. "What lady, sweetheart?" I asked, keeping my voice carefully neutral. Emma shrugged, already losing interest. "The pretty one who always wears the sparkly earrings. She smells like candy." Grant laughed, but it came out wrong. Forced, nervous. "Kids say the craziest things," he said, but I saw it. The flicker of panic in his eyes, the way his hand trembled slightly as he reached for his coffee mug. I was about to press further when the doorbell rang. Grant looked relieved. "I will get it." "No." I stepped around the island. "I will." I do not know why I insisted. Maybe some part of me already knew. Maybe my gut was trying to warn me about what waited on the other side of that door. I opened it to find Sloane Pruitt standing on my porch. She was holding 2 cups of coffee from the expensive place downtown, the one I never went to, because $6 for a latte felt criminal when you could make coffee at home for pennies. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup was flawless. She was wearing a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Sloane was my best friend. We had met 3 years ago at a book club meeting, bonded over our shared love of mystery novels and our mutual exhaustion from raising young children. She had a 5-year-old daughter named Lily. She was going through a divorce. I had held her hand through countless tearful phone calls. She was the closest thing I had to family in this town. "Hey, girl," Sloane smiled brightly, holding up the coffee cups. "Thought I would check on you. Grant mentioned you have been stressed." My blood ran cold. "Grant told you?" Sloane's smile flickered. Just for a second. Barely noticeable. But I noticed. "Well, you know," she laughed lightly. "We were chatting after the church potluck and he mentioned you have been tired lately. I figured caffeine was the least I could do." She stepped past me into the house before I could respond, her perfume trailing behind her. Vanilla. Something sweet. The same smell that clung to my husband's shirt. Sloane settled into my kitchen like she owned it, which I suppose she had been doing for 3 years. She knew where I kept the mugs, which drawer held the spoons, how I liked my coffee with just a splash of cream. She handed me the latte with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "Grant," she called out casually, "I brought you one, too." My husband appeared in the doorway, freshly showered, wearing clean clothes. He had been upstairs for exactly 8 minutes, fast. Even for him, Sloane. His voice was neutral, controlled. Thanks. Their eyes met for just a moment. Too long. Too loaded with something I could not identify. Or maybe I could identify it. Maybe I just did not want to. Emma ran through the kitchen, chasing Lucas, who had finally woken up. The chaos of morning took over. Breakfast to make, backpacks to pack, arguments to settle over who got the last strawberry yogurt. By the time I had loaded both kids into the car for school drop-off, Sloane was gone, and Grant had left for work. The lilies sat untouched on the counter, their sweet fragrance filling the house like a secret. I should have thrown them away. Instead, I drove my children to school, smiled at the other mothers, pretended everything was fine. That is what we do, is it not? We perform normalcy even when our insides are screaming that something is terribly wrong. After drop-off, I sat in the school parking lot for 15 minutes, staring at my phone. The text had arrived during breakfast, while I was buttering toast and pretending not to notice the way Sloane touched Grant's arm when she handed him his coffee. Unknown number. Check the Visa statement. The Marriott, every Tuesday. I had almost deleted it. Who sends anonymous texts like that? Crazy people, jealous exes, wrong numbers. But something stopped me. Looking back, I should have trusted that knot in my stomach. Ladies, your gut knows before your brain does. Write down what you notice. Dates, times, details. I wish I had started sooner. I pulled up our bank account on my phone. Grant and I had joint everything, checking, savings, credit cards. He handled most of the finances because he was the one earning money, and I was the one who had given up her nursing career 8 years ago to raise our children. The Visa statement loaded slowly on my screen. Marriott downtown, $189. Last Tuesday. Marriott downtown, $189. The Tuesday before that, Marriott downtown, $189. Every single Tuesday for the past 18 months. That is 78 Tuesdays. $14,742 spent at a hotel, 45 minutes from our house. Grant had told me those charges were client dinners, work expenses that would be reimbursed. I had never questioned it because why would I? He was my husband. He came home every night, mostly. He coached Lucas's little league team. He sat next to me in church every Sunday. He was not the kind of man who would rent a hotel room every week for 18 months, except apparently he was. I drove home in a daze. The pregnancy test sat in my bathroom drawer like a time bomb. The lilies perfumed my kitchen like a funeral arrangement. My phone buzzed with a text from Sloane. So good to see you this morning. We should do lunch soon. Miss you. The exclamation points felt aggressive, performative, like she was trying too hard to seem normal. I did not respond. That night, after the kids were in bed, I showed Grant the bank statements. We were standing in our bedroom, the door closed, voices low. I had printed out 18 months of charges, highlighted in yellow, arranged chronologically on our bed, like evidence at a crime scene. Grant looked at the papers. Then he looked at me. You are going through my accounts now. Our accounts, I corrected. Joint accounts. This is why I cannot talk to you, Harper. His voice dripped with condescension. You are paranoid. You are controlling. I am controlling. I let out a laugh that surprised us both. I have not controlled anything since I let you pick our Netflix password and you made it Grant the best. 2019. This is not funny. No, it is not. I pointed at the statements. Explain the hotel charges. Client dinners. I told you. At a Marriott? Every Tuesday? For 18 months? His phone buzzed on the nightstand. He lunged for it, but not fast enough. I saw the screen light up with a notification. The contact name glowed in the darkness. S with a heart emoji. Who is S? My voice came out steady, which shocked me. Inside, I was crumbling. No one. Work stuff. Work stuff with a heart emoji. Silence. The room felt smaller suddenly. The walls pressing in. 8 years of marriage. 2 children. A third on the way that he did not even know about. All of it balanced on the edge of a cliff, waiting for one of us to push. Grant ran a hand through his hair, the gesture I used to find charming. Now it looked like the tell of a man searching for his next lie. Fine, he said finally. You want the truth? I braced myself. I thought I was prepared. I thought I knew what was coming. I was not even close. I have been seeing someone, Grant said. The words came out flat, rehearsed, like he had practiced this speech in the mirror. It has been a few months. I was not happy. I needed something you could not give me. A few months, I repeated. He nodded. Every Tuesday for 18 months is not a few months, Grant. His jaw tightened. Who is she? I demanded. Does it matter? Who is she? The name hung in the air before he even said it. Some part of me already knew. Some part of me had known since she walked through my odd door that morning with coffee and a smile that did not reach her eyes. Sloane. The world stopped, not literally. The clock on our nightstand kept ticking. Grant kept talking, something about how it just happened, and he did not mean for it to go this far, and I had been so distant since Lucas was born. But I heard none of it. Sloane. My best friend. The woman who held my hand through her own divorce while she was sleeping with my husband. The woman who sat in my kitchen 200 times, drank my coffee, hugged my children. The woman who sent lilies to my house like a declaration of war. 2 years, I would later discover. Not a few months, not a casual fling. 24 months of hotel rooms and secret texts and lies stacked on lies. She sat in my kitchen 200 times and then went to a hotel with my husband, and I made her casseroles when her daughter was sick. When someone you trust betrays you, the shock feels physical, like your body is trying to reject what your brain just learned. You might shake. You might go numb. Both are normal. Let yourself feel it before you do anything else. I felt everything and nothing all at once. Get out, I whispered. Grant blinked. What? Get out of this house, he laughed. Actually laughed. This is my house, Harper. My name is on the mortgage. You do not even have a job. The words hit like a slap. He was right. I had no income, no savings of my own. I had given up everything to raise our children, and now I stood in my own bedroom, pregnant with his 3rd child, being told I had no claim to the life I had built. I am not going anywhere, Grant said. He grabbed his pillow and headed for the door. You can sleep in the guest room if you need space, but this is my house. The door closed behind him. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space where my marriage used to be. I did not sleep that night. I sat on the guest room bed, staring at my phone, scrolling through 3 years of text messages with Sloane. All the inside jokes, the venting sessions, the I love you girl, and you are my person, and what would I do without you? Every single message felt like a lie now. By morning, I had made a decision. I was going to confront her. I deserved answers. I deserved to look her in the eye and ask why. But first, I had to get through the day. I made breakfast for the kids, drove them to school, smiled at the other mothers in the drop-off line, performed normalcy, like my life depended on it. Then I called my mother. Mom, I said when she answered, I need to talk to you. Lorraine Mitchell had never been the warm and fuzzy type. She believed in keeping up appearances, pushing through hardship, and never airing dirty laundry in public. But she was my mother. Surely she would offer some comfort. I told her everything. Grant, Sloane, the hotel rooms, the lies. When I finished, there was a long pause. Well, honey, Lorraine said finally. Men stray. It is unfortunate, but it happens. Maybe if you had kept yourself up a little better. Have you gained weight? I hung up. Catastrophe number one. My own mother had just blamed me for my husband's affair. The woman who raised me, who was supposed to love me unconditionally, had taken his side without hesitation. I was completely alone, except I was too angry to feel sorry for myself. The rage carried me through the day, fueled me as I drove across town to Sloane's townhouse, propelled me up her front steps. I pounded on the door. She answered wearing Grant's college sweatshirt, his Ohio State hoodie, the one I had bought him for Christmas 3 years ago, the one he told me he had lost. Harper. Sloane's voice was calm, almost amused. I was wondering when you would show up. You were my best friend. I know. You sat in my house. You hugged my children. You pretended to care about me. I did care about you. She shrugged, leaning against the doorframe. But I cared about him more. For 2 years, I said. 2 years you lied to my face. Sloane sighed, like I was being dramatic, like I was the unreasonable one. Harper, I am sorry you found out this way, but honestly, he was never really yours. You just had him first. I slapped her. The sound echoed through the quiet neighborhood. My palm stung. Sloane's head snapped to the side, and then she smiled. I did not notice the phone in her other hand until it was too late. Did not realize she had been recording until she lowered it with a triumphant grin. Thanks for that. Her cheek was already turning red, but her eyes were gleaming. My lawyer will love this. Catastrophe number two. I had just given her exactly what she wanted. Evidence that I was violent, unstable, dangerous. I drove home in a panic, my hand shaking against the steering wheel. What had I done? I was not a violent person. I had never hit anyone in my entire life. But the rage had overtaken me, and now I had handed my enemies ammunition. When I pulled into my driveway, I knew immediately something was wrong. The front door was different. The lock had been changed. A new deadbolt gleamed in the afternoon sun. I ran to the door and tried my key. It did not fit. Through the window, I could see Emma, sitting on the couch, watching television. My daughter, in my house, behind a door I could not open. I pounded on the glass. Emma, Emma, sweetie. She looked up. Her face crumpled with confusion. Mommy? The door opened. Grant stood there, blocking the entrance. Burns, arms crossed over his chest. You cannot be here, he said. This is my home. Correction, this is my house, and you just assaulted Sloane. I stared at him in disbelief. She recorded it? Grant's lips curled into a smile that did not reach his eyes. She is on her way to file a police report right now. If I were you, I would leave before the cops show up. My children are in there. My children, he corrected, and I need to protect them from their unstable mother. Grant, please, but the door was already closing. The new lock clicked into place. I stood on my own front porch, locked out of my own home, watching my 7-year-old daughter press her palm against the window, with tears streaming down her face. Catastrophe number 3. I had lost my husband, lost my best friend, lost my mother's support. And now I had lost access to my children and my home. I sat down on the porch steps and cried. I do not know how long I sat there. Long enough for the sun to start setting. Long enough for my tears to run dry. Long enough for a pair of sensible orthopedic shoes to appear in my field of vision. I looked up. Dolores Finch stood before me, 78 years old. Gray hair pulled into a neat bun, holding a blanket in one hand and a bottle of bourbon in the other. Dottie had lived next door for 15 years. She knew everything about everyone on our street. She brought casseroles when people had babies and flowers when people died. I had always thought of her as a sweet old lady who minded her own business. I was about to discover how wrong I was. "Honey," Dottie said, settling down beside me on the steps, "I have buried 2 husbands and divorced 1. Cry it out, then we plan." She wrapped the blanket around my shoulders and unscrewed the bourbon. Grant always did have that peaked in high school energy. "Now drink this. It is medicinal," I almost laughed. "Almost." "I cannot," I said. "I am pregnant." Dottie paused. Her eyes went wide for just a moment. Then she shrugged and took a long swig from the bottle herself. "Well then, I will drink yours too." Despite everything, I smiled. That was the moment Dottie Finch became my lifeline. Dottie took me back to her house. It was small and cluttered with 40 years of accumulated life. Photographs of her late husbands covered the walls. Ceramic cats lined every available surface. The couch smelled faintly of lavender and mothballs. It was the most welcoming place I had ever been. "First thing tomorrow," Dottie said, pouring herself another bourbon while I sipped tea. "You get a lawyer. Not the cheapest one, not your cousin's friend. A real family law attorney. Many of them offer free consultations. I do not have any money. You have rights." Dottie fixed me with a sharp gaze. "Do not let him control the narrative while you are in shock. That is what men like Grant count on. They move fast while you are still reeling. You need to move faster." I shook my head. "How do you know all of this?" Dottie smiled, and for the first time I saw something steely beneath her grandmotherly exterior. "I was a paralegal for 30 years, honey. Family law. I have seen every trick in the book, and I have watched Grant Mitchell drive to Sloane Pruitt's house every Tuesday night for the past 2 years. I almost dropped my tea." "You knew?" The guilt flickered across her face. "I did not want to be the one to break your heart, but I kept records, just in case." She stood slowly and walked to an old filing cabinet in the corner. When she returned, she placed a manila folder in my lap. Inside were handwritten notes, dates, times, license plate numbers, photographs of Grant's car parked in Sloane's driveway, time-stamped and labeled, 18 months of evidence, yet documented by a 78-year-old woman who never missed a thing. "Why?" I whispered. "Why did you do this?" Dottie settled back into her chair with a heavy sigh. "Because I was you once. 35 years ago, my first husband had an affair with my sister. Everyone knew except me. When I found out, I had nothing. No proof, no support. I lost everything in the divorce. I am so sorry." She waved off my sympathy. "Point is, I learned. When I saw Grant sneaking around, I decided that if it ever came to light, you would have what I did not, evidence." Tears streamed down my face. For the first time since this nightmare began, I did not feel completely alone. Dottie let me sleep in her guest room that night. In the morning, she drove me to the women's shelter on the other side of town and helped me apply for emergency housing. Then she handed me a business card, Jennifer Hartwell, attorney at law. "She is the best," Dottie said. "Tell her I sent you." I called Jennifer from the shelter's communal phone. Her assistant squeezed me in for a consultation that afternoon. Jennifer Hartwell was everything I was not. Confident, polished, terrifying. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car and heels, sharp enough to be classified as weapons. But when I told her my story, her expression softened. "Your husband made a critical mistake," Jennifer said, reviewing Dottie's documentation. "He locked you out without a court order, changed the locks on a jointly owned property. That is illegal. He said the house is his. The house is marital property." She made a note on her legal pad. "We file for divorce first thing tomorrow. We request emergency temporary custody based on his unlawful lockout. and we used these records to establish his pattern of deception. I do not have money to pay you. Jennifer smiled. We will work out a payment plan. But Harper, I need you to understand something. This will not be easy. Grant has resources. He has clearly been planning this for a while. But you have something he does not. What is that? The truth. And documentation. She tapped Dottie's folder. Your neighbor may have just saved your life. We filed for divorce the next morning. By Friday, we had a temporary custody hearing. I stood before Judge Robert Callahan with my hands shaking and my heart racing. Grant sat across the aisle with his lawyer, Douglas Whitmore, looking smug and confident. But Jennifer was better. She presented Dottie's documentation, the hotel receipts, the timeline of the affair, the illegal lockout. Grant's lawyer tried to object, tried to discredit the evidence, but the facts were undeniable. This court grants temporary 50-50 custody to both parents, Judge Callahan ruled. Mr. Mitchell, you are ordered to return Mrs. Mitchell's personal belongings and provide her access to the marital home for retrieval. I collapsed into Jennifer's arms, sobbing with relief. That afternoon, I moved into a tiny apartment above a laundromat. It smelled like fabric, softener, and depression. The carpet was stained, the windows did not quite close all the way, but it was mine, and for 1 week, I thought the worst was over. I had my kids half the time. I had a lawyer. I had a plan. I should have known Grant was just getting started. Westbrook, Ohio is the kind of town where everyone knows everyone. We have 1 main street, 2 grocery stores, 4 churches, and an incredibly efficient gossip network that operates faster than any social media platform. Within days of my divorce filing, the whispers began. I first noticed at school pickup. The other mothers, women I had chatted with for years, suddenly could not meet my eyes. Conversations stopped when I approached. Smiles became tight and forced. Then the mom group chat went silent. I had been part of Westbrook Moms for 3 years. Birthday party planning, carpool coordination, recipe sharing. When I checked the app on Thursday morning, I discovered I had been removed. No explanation, no warning, just gone. On Sunday, I made the mistake of going to church. First Community Church had been in my spiritual home since we moved to Westbrook. I taught Sunday school. I organized the annual bake sale. Pastor Rick Dawson had officiated at Emma's baptism. I thought foolishly that the church would be a safe space, that people who knew me would give me the benefit of the doubt. Instead, Pastor Rick pulled me aside after the service. Harper, he said, his voice dripping with false concern. I have been counseling Grant through this difficult time. He is really trying to change. Change? I stared at him in disbelief. He cheated on me for 2 years with my best friend. Marriage is sacred. Pastor Rick shook his head sadly. Have you considered your role in pushing him away? My role. The words hit like a physical blow. Men do not stray from happy homes, Harper. Perhaps if you had been more attentive to your husband's needs, more present, more accommodating, I walked out of that church and never went back. But the damage was already done. Grant had gotten to everyone first. He had painted himself as the victim, the devoted husband blindsided by his wife's mental breakdown, and people believed him. Someone spray-painted homewrecker on my apartment door. Let that sink in. My husband had an affair for 2 years, and I was labeled the homewrecker. I reported it to the police. They took a report. Nothing happened. That night, I lay in my tiny apartment, listening to the washing machines rumble downstairs, and wondered how everything had gone so wrong. My phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had tagged me in a Facebook post. It was Sloane's slap video, edited, of course. The recording started the moment my hand connected with her face, cutting out everything before. The context, the provocation, Her wearing my husband's sweatshirt. Just me, looking violent and unhinged. Hitting a woman who appeared to be doing nothing wrong. The comments were brutal. No wonder he cheated. She seems crazy. Poor Sloane. I hope she presses charges. I wanted to explain, to tell my side, to make everyone understand. But Jennifer had warned me. Do not engage. Do not post anything. Everything you say can and will be used against you in court. So I stayed silent while my reputation was destroyed. The emergency custody hearing happened 2 weeks later. Douglas Whitmore, Grant's lawyer, came prepared. He presented the slap video, a statement from Pastor Rick about my instability, testimony from 3 church members who claimed I had become increasingly erratic over the past year, and then the final blow. The next witness, Whitmore said, is Lorraine Mitchell, the defendant's mother. I turned to see my own mother walking to the witness stand. She did not look at me. Mrs. Mitchell, Whitmore began, would you describe your daughter's mental state over the past few years? Lorraine sighed heavily. Harper has always been dramatic, emotional. She has difficulty accepting reality when it does not match her expectations. And in your opinion, is she fit to have primary custody of her children? My mother paused. Then she said the words that broke something inside me. Honestly, I think the children would be better off with their father. The courtroom blurred. Jennifer grabbed my hand under the table, squeezing tight. Based on the evidence presented, Judge Callahan said, this court grants full temporary custody to Grant Mitchell. The mother will have supervised visitation only, pending psychological evaluation. I watched my children leave with their father. Lucas waved from the car window, confused but trusting. Emma did not look back. That was the moment I understood. My husband had not just cheated on me, he had spent 2 years building a case, and I never saw it coming. Document everything from day one, not just texts and emails. Keep a journal with dates, times, witnesses. Courts do not run on emotion. They run on evidence. I learned this too late. I stopped functioning for 3 days. I did not shower, did not eat, did not answer my phone. Just lay in my apartment, staring at the water-stained ceiling, trying to understand how my life had collapsed so completely. Dottie came on the 4th day. She did not knock, did not wait for permission, just used the spare key I had given her and marched into my apartment with a pot of chicken soup and a no-nonsense expression. You smell, she announced. When did you last bathe? I do not remember. Unacceptable. She set down the soup and opened the curtains, flooding the room with painful sunlight. You have exactly 15 minutes to shower while I heat this up. Then we are going to talk strategy. There is no strategy. I pulled the blanket over my head. He won. It is over. The blanket was yanked away. Harper Mitchell, Dottie said sternly, I did not spend 2 years documenting your husband's affair just to watch you give up. Now get in that shower before I drag you there myself. Something about her tone, so fierce and maternal, cracked through my numbness. I shuffled to the bathroom and stood under the hot water until it ran cold. When I emerged, Dottie had soup waiting and a cup of tea that smelled suspiciously like bourbon. Better, she said, now. Tell me something. Does Grant still have that old laptop? The silver one? I blinked. What? When I was documenting his visits to Sloane's house, I noticed he always carried a laptop bag. Silver laptop. He would leave it in the car sometimes. I wondered if it was a personal computer he did not want you to see. I thought for a moment. Grant had upgraded to a new laptop last year. His old one should be in the storage closet, with other things we never threw away. Why does it matter? Because men are stupid, Dottie said simply. They think deleting files means they are gone. They forget about cloud backups and saved passwords. If Grant was planning this divorce for as long as I suspect, There might be evidence on that computer. We drove to the house during Grant's work hours. I still had a key, and technically, it was still marital property. The storage closet was exactly as I had left it, filled with old tax returns and Christmas decorations, and yes, Grant's old laptop. I grabbed it and left. That night, Dottie and I sat at her kitchen table, the laptop humming between us. Grant had never been tech-savvy. His password was still his birthday. His email was still logged in, and what we found changed everything. You know what my second husband said when I caught him cheating? Dottie asked while the files loaded. What? It is not what it looks like. He was naked. She was naked. There was a trapeze involved. I laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time in weeks. There she is, Dottie smiled. Then the emails appeared, and I stopped laughing. Grant had consulted a divorce attorney 18 months ago. He had been planning this since before I even suspected anything. The emails outlined strategy, discussed asset protection, mentioned hiding money. There is more, Dottie said grimly. Look at this. Bank statements, wire transfers. Large sums of money moved to an account in his brother Kevin's name. He is hiding assets, I whispered. It gets worse. Dottie pulled up a document, a PDF of our mortgage papers. Second mortgage, taken out 8 months ago. I never signed this. But your signature is on it. I looked closer. The signature was mine, perfectly replicated, on a document I had never seen. He forged my signature. My voice shook. To take out a loan on our house, that is fraud. Dottie's eyes gleamed. That is criminal fraud, honey. But there was one more discovery waiting, one that would change the trajectory of everything. In Grant's text messages, backed up to the cloud, I found conversations with Sloane, hundreds of them, but also buried deeper, conversations with someone else, a woman named Monica. The texts were flirtatious, explicit, dated within the past 6 months. Who is Monica? I asked. Dottie squinted at the screen. I do not know, but it seems your husband is not just cheating on you. He is cheating on his mistress. I sat back, my mind spinning. Grant was not just a liar. He was a serial liar, a fraud, a man building his life on a foundation of deception, and he had just given me leverage. The next morning, I did something no one expected. I called Sloane. She answered on the third ring, her voice cautious. Harper, we need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. I have information you need to hear about Grant, about someone named Monica. Silence. Then, where do you want to meet? We chose a coffee shop 3 towns over, far from Westbrook's prying eyes. I arrived first, ordered a tea I could not afford, and waited. Sloane walked in looking less put together than usual. Her hair was pulled into a messy ponytail. Her eyes had dark circles beneath them. She looked like a woman who had not been sleeping well. Good. This better not be a trap, Sloane said, sliding into the booth across from me. It is not. Then what do you want? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots. Grant's texts with Monica, the flirtatious messages, the explicit photos. Sloane's face went pale. He is cheating on you too, I said. Her name is Monica Reynolds, has been going on for 6 months at least. You are lying. I wish I was. Sloane grabbed my phone, scrolling through the messages with trembling fingers. Her jaw tightened, her eyes filled with tears. He told me I was special, she whispered. He said once the divorce was final, we would be together. He promised. He promised me forever once too. Look how that turned out. Sloane looked up at me. For a moment, we were not enemies. We were just 2 women who had been deceived by the same man. I left my husband for him, she said. I gave up my career for him. He told me you were cold and distant. He told me I was his soulmate. I shrugged. Guess we are both idiots. Sloane let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Sometimes the person who hurt you has information that can help you. I am not saying forgive them. I am saying be strategic. My grandmother used to say, keep your friends close and your enemies useful. I do not want to be your friend, Sloane said. I do not want to be yours either. But I want to destroy Grant Mitchell. And I am guessing right now, so do you. Sloane was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a flash drive. I have been keeping records, she said. Insurance, in case he ever tried to leave me, like he left you. Bank accounts he does not think I know about. Offshore money. Recordings of conversations where he admits to things. She pushed the flash drive across the table. He always said I was his insurance policy. I never understood what he meant until now. I took the drive. Why are you helping me? Because Monica is 23 years old. Sloane's voice was bitter. He is doing to me what he did to you. I was just too blind to see it. We sat in silence. Two women united by betrayal. What happens now? Sloane asked. Now, I said, we take everything. For 2 weeks, things went well. Jennifer Hartwell filed an emergency motion presenting evidence of Grant's fraud, the forged signature on the mortgage, the hidden assets, the offshore accounts Sloane had documented. The judge ordered a forensic accountant to review the finances. Grant's brother, Kevin, was subpoenaed to explain the money transfers to his accounts. My supervised visitation became unsupervised again. I got to see my children without a social worker watching our every interaction. Emma hugged me so tight, I thought she might never let go. Mommy, she whispered, Daddy said you were sick. But you are not sick. No, baby. I am not sick. I knew it. She pulled back, her eyes fierce and certain. I told Lucas you would come back. I held both my children and let myself believe the worst was over. I even started to rebuild, got my nursing license reinstated, went on a job interview at Riverside Memorial Hospital that went well. The hiring manager said she would call by the end of the week. For 2 weeks, I thought I had won. I forgot the most important rule. Grant does not lose. Grant destroys. I came home from the grocery store to find police cars outside my apartment. My first thought was the graffiti. Maybe they had finally found who spray painted my door. Then I saw Officer Bradley walking toward me with handcuffs. Harper Mitchell? Yes? You are under arrest for aggravated menacing. You have the right to remain silent. What? I dropped my grocery bags. What are you talking about? Grant Mitchell filed a report stating you threatened him with a knife during a custody exchange yesterday. That is insane. I was never alone with Grant yesterday. The exchange happened at the police station like the court ordered. We have a witness statement, Officer Bradley said. A woman named Monica Reynolds claims she saw the whole thing. My blood ran cold. Monica. Grant's other mistress, the woman he had promised would be the next Mrs. Mitchell if she helped him destroy me. And now she was lying under oath to put me in jail. The handcuffs clicked around my wrists. Neighbors watched from their windows. The grocery bags lay scattered on the sidewalk, milk pooling on the concrete. But the worst part came later. As Officer Bradley loaded me into the patrol car, I saw a familiar vehicle pulling up, Grant's SUV. He parked, got out, walked to the back door, and pulled out my children. Emma screamed when she saw me in handcuffs. Lucas started crying. Grant wrapped his arms around them both, his face arranged in an expression of concerned fatherhood. I am so sorry the kids had to see this, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Emma struggled against his grip. Mommy, Mommy! It is okay, sweetie, Grant said. Mommy is sick. She needs help. The patrol car door closed. My children's faces disappeared from view, and I shattered. I spent the night in jail. The cell was cold, the mattress was thin, the fluorescent lights never turned off. Sometime around 2 in the morning, I started cramping. By 3, I was bleeding. The guards called an ambulance. I was rushed to Riverside Memorial Hospital, the same hospital where I had just interviewed for a job. I lost the baby in a room that smelled like antiseptic and broken dreams. Grant did not visit. He did not call. He posted on Facebook about protecting his children from their unstable mother. 57 people liked it. Dottie paid my bail. She was waiting in the hospital lobby when they released me 2 days later, her face etched with worry and rage. "I am going to kill him," she said slowly. "Get in line." I went back to her house because my apartment did not feel safe anymore. I sat on her floral couch, wrapped in her crocheted blanket, and stared at the wall. Rock bottom has a gift hidden inside it. Clarity. When everything is taken from you, you finally see what matters. For me, it was Emma and Lucas. And I decided right there on Dottie's couch, still bleeding from the miscarriage, still facing criminal charges, still destroyed in every way possible, that Grant could take everything else, but he could not have my children believing their mother gave up. I started fighting. First, I created a private Facebook group for women experiencing divorce abuse. Within a week, 200 women had joined. Within 2 weeks, 2,000. One member was a forensic accountant named Carolyn Peters, who offered to review Grant's finances pro bono. Another was a journalist named Deborah Walsh, who was writing an expose on family court corruption. Another was a retired judge named Margaret Sullivan, who provided legal guidance. They became my army. Second, I investigated Monica Reynolds. It did not take long to find dirt. Monica had a record, 3 previous accusations of filing false police reports, all connected to men she was romantically involved with. 2 of those men had been arrested based on her testimony. Both cases were later dismissed when her lies were exposed. Monica was not a reliable witness. She was a professional liar for hire. Third, I visited Grant's brother. Kevin Mitchell lived in a modest house on the wrong side of town, a far cry from Grant's expensive lifestyle. His wife, Tammy, was threatening to leave him. Their marriage was crumbling under the weight of Grant's schemes. "You helped him hide money," I said, standing in Kevin's cluttered living room. "You let him use your name to commit fraud. Do you know what happens to accomplices when the FBI gets involved?" Kevin went pale. "FBI? Wire fraud is a federal offense, Kevin. So is mortgage fraud. So is money laundering." I let that sink in. "Grant is going to prison. The only question is whether you go with him." Tammy appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "Tell her everything, Kevin." "I cannot." "You tell her," Tammy said, "or I take the kids and you never see us again." Kevin crumbled. He told me everything. The hidden accounts, the forged documents, Grant's plans to drain our assets and leave me with nothing, the payments to Monica Reynolds, $5,000 in cash, in exchange for her testimony. He even had receipts. I left Kevin's house with enough evidence to destroy Grant 10 times over. But I was not done yet. The final court date arrived on a Tuesday in March. 1 year after the lilies appeared on my counter. 1 year after my world collapsed. 1 year of fighting to survive. I wore a simple black dress. My hair was pulled back. I carried myself with a calm I did not entirely feel. Grant sat across the courtroom with Douglas Whitmore, looking confident. Why would he not be? He had won every round so far, but he did not know what I had. Jennifer Hartwell called our first witness. Kevin Mitchell. Grant's face changed as his brother took the stand. Confusion first, then recognition, then fear. Kevin testified about the hidden accounts, the forged signatures, the cash payments, the conspiracy to destroy me. When Kevin stepped down, Grant was sweating. "Our next witness," Jennifer announced, "Monica Reynolds." Monica walked to the stand looking nervous. Grant tried to catch her eye, but she would not look at him, because Monica had been visited by Detective Patricia Coleman the day before, informed that lying under oath was perjury. That conspiracy to file a false police report was a felony. That Grant had promised 3 different women they would be the next Mrs. Mitchell And she was just the latest in a long line of disposable tools. Monica chose herself. She recanted, admitted Grant paid her to lie, admitted she never witnessed any threatening behavior, admitted everything. Grant tried to object, tried to speak, tried to claim this was all a misunderstanding. Judge Coleman cut him off. Mr. Mitchell, I have seen many divorces in my courtroom. What you have done goes beyond infidelity. You systematically destroyed your wife's reputation, endangered her mental health, committed financial fraud, tampered with witnesses, and manipulated the justice system. The judge's voice was ice. This court grants full custody of Emma and Lucas Mitchell to their mother. The father will have supervised visitation only. Pending criminal investigation. All marital assets are awarded to Mrs. Mitchell, including the hidden accounts totaling $340,000. Mr. Mitchell is ordered to pay full back support, attorney fees, and damages for emotional distress. Grant's face crumpled. Additionally, Judge Coleman continued, this court is referring evidence of fraud, forgery, perjury, and witness tampering to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution. Grant lunged toward me. 2 bailiffs grabbed him before he could get close. This is not over, Harper, he screamed as they dragged him away. This is not over. I watched him disappear through the thick courtroom doors, still screaming. Then I turned to see my children running toward me. Emma hit me first, her arms wrapping around my waist, her face buried in my stomach. Lucas came next, not really understanding what was happening, but knowing Mommy was crying, and that meant he should hug her. I dropped to my knees and held them both. Mommy, Emma whispered. Are we going home now? Yes, baby. I kissed her hair, her cheeks, her forehead. We are going home. 6 months later, I stood in my kitchen, the same kitchen where the lilies had appeared, and watched the sunset through the window. The house felt different now, lighter, like a weight had been lifted from the walls themselves. I had repainted Emma's room purple, her favorite color. Lucas had a new set of building blocks scattered across the living room floor. Dottie came for Sunday dinner every week, bringing desserts and unsolicited dating advice. I was working as a nurse again at Riverside Memorial. Night shifts, mostly, but I did not mind. The work felt meaningful. The paycheck felt earned. My support group had grown to 5,000 members. I spoke at local events about divorce abuse, about financial manipulation, about the importance of documentation. Women I had never met sent me messages saying I had given them the courage to leave. One evening, while cleaning out the garage, I found an old box. Inside were letters I had written to myself at 22, back when I was fresh out of nursing school and believed the world was full of possibilities. One letter caught my eye. I hope I never lose myself in someone else. I read those words, written in my younger handwriting, and I cried. Not from sadness, from recognition, from grief for the woman I had been, and gratitude for the woman I had become. The doorbell rang. Dottie stood on my porch with a casserole and a knowing smile. So, she said, settling into my kitchen like she owned it. Are you going to start dating again? Dottie, I just got my life back. I am just saying. She served herself a generous portion. The mailman, Bobby Crawford, has been very friendly lately. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my wine. Grant took 8 years of my life. He took my trust, my confidence, and for a while, my children. But he could not take what mattered most, my ability to rebuild. If you are in the middle of your storm, I want you to know it ends. Not because someone rescues you, because you rescue yourself. And on the other side, there is a version of yourself you have not met yet. She is stronger than you know, and she is waiting. My name is Harper Mitchell. I am a mother, a nurse, a survivor, and no one will ever make me small again. If this story speaks to something inside you, stay until the end. And if it helps you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Hit that subscribe button so you do not miss stories like this. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had to fight for yourself when no one else would? Your story matters. And sometimes, hearing someone else survive gives us permission to believe we can too. Now, let us begin. Closing statement. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to bring meaningful stories and valuable life lessons to our audience. Every word was crafted with intention, because we believe stories have the power to heal, inspire, and remind you that you are never truly alone. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and thank you for being part of this community. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve it.